Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. Mike, even though it's summer, we have some great questions over this talking period, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot more to talk about before we get football started, but let's jump right into those, and some of them are about the NBA Summer League. And our first question is from Preston Cook, who wants to know, don't you think it's a little too early to be analyzing last year's Hogs and their status as future NBA players based on a few Summer League games? You started out singing Nick Smith Jr.'s praises. A couple of days later, you were touting Ricky Council. Personally, I think Jordan Walsh has been the most impressive, but that could change. Are you trying to predict the first who will be called up to an NBA roster?
You know, I think at the time, and I think I've done a couple of these. I mean, look, I'm an analyst. I get asked questions. I don't go, don't ask me that question.
No, yeah.
If they ask me the question, I will answer it. And I can't remember the exact, I think the question was who's been the most impressive, or who might have been, the original question might have been, who do you think, based on one game, has the best, and look, it's a stretch. I realize that, because what are you going to predict somebody, who's going to be the first guy in the NBA to be called up to a roster based on the first couple of G League games or Summer League games? So my initial impression was when I saw Nick Smith Jr. in that first game, I thought, wow, this is the guy we kind of thought was going to be here, because he was doing all that stuff. He was hitting threes. He was hitting pull-up jumpers. He was driving and doing the step back. He was blowing by guys and going to the rim, playing defense. He was acting as a point guard. Had some really cool assists, kind of pew like that. So I just thought, wow, this, you know. So I talked a little bit about maybe this is the guy that we thought was going to be at Arkansas when he had the injury. And I talked about the fact that he said the injury's not a factor anymore.
Yeah.
And then what happened is what usually happens when you say stuff like that, the next time out, he's missing shots. Now, look, he hasn't looked bad in any of these games that I've seen, because his defense has been good, and he's been acting as a point guard and been really good with the assists and all that stuff. But he was back missing shots again, which frustrated a lot of Razorback fans. And he's done that in a couple of games. So I don't know what's going on there. I'm going to guess and say that he's still dealing with some of that stuff. So you have a really good game and the shots are going and everything's right. Then the next time out, you miss a shot, then you miss another one. Now it gets in your head.
Yeah.
But these are, again, very preliminary games for these guys. The teams they're with aren't going to decide a lot of stuff right now. And so I agree. You're going to have some inconsistencies. It's going to be a while before we kind of get a picture of what these guys are really like. And you pointed out before we went on, they're not playing NBA guys. They're playing other G League,
Summer League guys.
Other Summer League guys that have been drafted, and signed. So we'll see. I don't really know. They both Jordan Walsh and Anthony Black performed in games after I was asked. It was two separate times I was asked to analyze, and they hadn't done that yet. So they've both come on and looked good. Really surprised by Jordan Walsh.
Yeah, no, you're good. They're all
Jordan
confusing.
Walsh, because, you know, he was the one that, to me, when I looked at him and he was drafted, or he declared for the draft, and there was some talk he can still get out of it, and he didn't. I was a little bit surprised that he decided to go through it, because I thought, man, he's middle second round, maybe late second round. Went higher than I thought. So obviously they evaluated him well. But he's a guy that performed a lot better than I thought he would. But again, that's one game.
Yeah.
What does he do next time out? What does he do, from 6 months from now? What's he looking like? So I agree with the original question or the premise. I mean, what are we going to do? You can't make bold predictions based on one or two outings.
It's really tough, and I was asked after the draft by on Wes Moore's show. I was asked by him, who do you think will have a really long career in the NBA?
And that's sort of what I was getting
exactly, and it's so hard to predict. I said Nick Smith Jr. Right. I think he has a really long career if he can stay healthy. I think he looks to be a guy that will have a really long career, but who knows? I mean, we could be wrong. It could be Jordan Walsh. It could be maybe Ricky Council. He's been looking really good in some of these games.
He's sort of been more consistent.
I've noticed that. I'm like, and when you look at the highlights too, he shows up in almost every single highlight reel from the Summer League. He's an explosive player. We could see him have a really long career. It honestly just matters when you see them play against NBA caliber talent.
That's what it's going to matter.
That's what it's going to matter. Exactly, Mike. Lonnie Cox asks, does it bother you that Nick Smith Jr. and Jordan Walsh already look a lot better getting paid to play basketball than they did as Razorbacks? I wish them the best, but where was this when we were having an up and down season?
First of all, on up and down season, I think if you say that, you're putting a lot of emphasis on things that we've come to learn under Musselman don't matter much. Like, for instance, where you finish in the SEC, what you do in the SEC tournament. They were a Sweet 16 team, beat the #1 team in the country at the time, and lost to the eventual national champions. Yeah. I don't know how you can call that up and down, because that's everything you do from the time the season starts till the end is building up to the NCAA tournament.
That's a really awesome season, by the way. Razorback fans had very high expectations. But what is not an up and down season? Getting to the Final Four? I mean, you know what I mean?
And again, I think what some of this is it was hyped as he's got the highest rated recruiting class of all time. But that's a recruiting class. Those are guys coming in as freshmen. And we all kind of learned, because here at Arkansas, we'd never seen a class like that before. Mm-hmm. And what we learned is they're still freshmen. They still make mistakes. And it wasn't just Nick Smith Jr. And Jordan Walsh, for a while, he couldn't play defense without fouling out.
Anthony Black made mistakes too.
Black was up and down, mainly trying to function as a point guard. Where I think that's where he's going to end up in the NBA, and I think eventually he's got Magic Johnson potential, big, tall point guard.
Yes, I agree completely.
But he's still learning that position at that level. So again, I don't think it was an up and down season. I think what's going to happen to erase some of the anger because you've got some fans, I don't know what percentage of them, but you've got some that were all hyped up over this stuff. Hey, we're going to win the national championship this year with all these guys. And then it didn't happen, and so it's like they're a bust. You know, we got all these one and dones and they didn't do anything. What I think is going to happen is you're going to have a better season at some point, like next year or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it will kind of erase the memory of that.
Well, you almost are poised. I mean, look at what Musselman went out and did, and we've talked about it on this show. He went out and got players who have more experience, who are older, right? There aren't those one and dones on this roster. You bring back Trevin Brazile.
I'm not sure
you
there's
bring
a one and done on the roster for next year.
I don't think there is either. So we'll see if we're wrong on that. I mean, who knows? But I do think that he went out and he got guys with more experience for that reason, right? He's aiming to go further, possibly Final Four, maybe even a national title. So I think you're right on that too, Mike. Mousestown says last week you mentioned the NCAA plans to crack down on schools who use NIL deals to recruit. Everybody I talk to says they'll get sued if they try it. What makes the new guy at the NCAA think they can win in court?
What he did was he cited and I've looked at it just briefly. I'm not a lawyer, but he cited a precedent type case back in I think it was '88 maybe.
Oh, wow.
In which either UNLV or Jerry Tarkanian, one or the other, got hit with a probation of some type. And I guess what happened was the governor of Nevada got the legislature to pass some kind of a legislation making whatever he did not illegal. And so they sued. They said, hey, you put him on probation, but he didn't do it. It's according to our state law, he can do that. So you have to take this penalty off. And what the courts ended up ruling, and I don't think it went all the way to the Supreme Court. I think it was an appellate court or one of those regional courts or whatever they call it. What they ended up ruling was very interesting. They said, this isn't about what's legal and illegal. They said, any organization has a right to have rules and say, if you want to be a member of our organization, our club or whatever, you have to abide by our rules. And if you don't want to, then you can just leave. It doesn't mean what they did was illegal and they couldn't go join another club. But for instance, take a property owners association. A lot of people buy these houses and they find themselves in a property owner situation. And let's say the property owners say, hey, you can't park your cars in your front yard. That's part of our thing. You got to park them in the driveway. And you say, no, where I lived before, I like parking my pickup in front of the front door, so I'm going to do that. Well, they come back in and punish you.
Yeah, they could, yeah.
And I'm telling you, you could take it to court all you wanted, but they have an established legal right to say, if you're a member of this property owners association, you have to follow these rules. So that's what he's basically saying. We created rules for NIL, two basic rules, but the one big rule is you can't get into bidding wars for recruits and just start trying to outbid people. The way you use an NIL with an incoming freshman is you can tell them, hey, we've got a lot of NIL opportunities. If you sign with us, then we can discuss that. But right now, we can't really give you any specific deals. Well, Tennessee and there may be some other states pass laws saying, hey, it's okay to
do that,
offer an NIL to a freshman. And so now they're saying your rules can't supersede state law. What I think the NCAA president is saying is go ahead and sue us, because what we're going to say is we're not saying it's illegal to offer a high school senior an NIL deal. We're saying if you want to be a part of the NCAA, you can't do that.
You cannot do that, yeah.
And he thinks they'll win.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
That makes sense. I mean, especially when you have a precedent case. You know, I know back from my media law classes in college, when you have a precedent case like that that's strong, you will win. Basically, if that was the precedent, you will win. It's very hard to overturn those precedent cases.
And it's also common logic, and I never thought of it this way. But when you agree to join an organization, they make rules, and you can belong or not belong.
Same when you sign a contract.
If a bunch of these people that are getting these bidding wars to get basketball or football players, if they don't like it, they could say, okay, NCAA, we're dropping out. We're going to start our own organization where we can offer as much money as possible. And then you could do that because the new organization would allow it.
Yeah.
But what the NCAA and the new president, Charlie Baker, whatever his name is saying, hey, this was a rule put in place after the Supreme Court decided this. And it's got to be there because we can't turn college basketball or college football into a bidding war where everybody's just trying to outbid everybody. You don't even do that in pro sports.
No.
Because you got salary caps.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it brings up another good point because even when you come and join like Arkansas football or Arkansas basketball, there's a code of conduct that you have to follow as a student athlete. And you can be kicked off the team even though what you did may have not been illegal or may have not even been bad to the university. It breaks their code of conduct, excuse me.
Lou Holtz had what he called the do-right rule.
There you go.
He dismissed guys, even though they weren't found guilty of doing anything. He said, you still didn't do what was right, you're off the team. You're suspended.
So could they sue Lou Holtz or Arkansas football? Maybe, but they probably wouldn't win.
Probably wouldn't win.
On the same subject, Pete says, I personally think the court will say that a high school kid can shop around for the best deal. It's wrong and will destroy the sport for most schools, but it's coming. I bet you dinner on it. Ooh, he's betting you dinner on it, Mike.
Well, he needs to bet the NCAA president because he's the one that said if you sue us, we will win because we've got precedent. We will obviously have to see what happens.
Yeah.
He hasn't even started to enforce this yet that I know of. I'm waiting for the first school to get nailed. Who's it going to be?
Oh.
Who is the first school? Is it going to be Tennessee? Is it going to be A&M?
Maybe LSU.
Who is going to get nailed for offering a specific amount of money to a player saying, we'll give you $400,000 and another school is going, well, geez, we can only afford $300,000. And so that is a direct violation of the NCAA rule on NIL. So who's going to be the first one that gets nailed on this? Are they going to issue is he firing a warning shot? Is he basically saying, I'm going to start enforcing this, let everybody sit back and digest that for a while, and then say, now let's see what you do? That's what I'm guessing. I don't think he'll go after anybody that's done it up till now. But I think he's sent his message out there. Now he's going to wait and see, okay, who's doing this?
Yeah.
And what that's going to do is it's going to encourage some of these coaches to turn people in because, I mean, Sam Pittman has complained about it. Dave Van Horn has complained about it. Van Horn told us coaches don't like this.
No.
but we have no choice but to get involved in it because everybody's doing it. But if you give us a path out of this, yes, we will sit back and say, now you can't do that.
Exactly. And you almost have to set an example, right? With somebody's got to be an example for everybody else, and we're kind of waiting to see who is going to be that example.
What I see from a lot of fans right now when I see this discussed on the internet is it's a give up attitude, and they're just saying, hey, there's nothing we can do. And some like it. Some think it's good. It's just good to be throwing money around in college sports.
Yeah, if you have the money, I guess.
What I say is that turns it more into pro sports, and fans are starting to reject pro sports and watch college sports more. They were for a while because it was different. It didn't have a lot of the issues that you have when you become a professional athlete.
Yeah.
You turn college athletics into professional sports, and I think it's going to start to hurt. And I think at some point, think about this. What if it turned into a situation where 5 or 6 schools had all the money and they were buying all the players and everybody else had no shot? So every year the same people, are in the college playoffs. What do you think that would do long term to the sport?
Not good. It wouldn't be.
And
No one would want to
turning,
watch.
Yes, I mean, if you're an Arkansas fan and you never have a shot, at some point you lose interest.
Yeah.
If you're if you're a Missouri fan or some school that doesn't have wads of money, I mean, Lane Kiffin's been complaining about this at Ole Miss, saying we don't have wads of money.
No.
So what happens here when the sport turns into something for 5 or 6 schools with Aggies, have big bucks. LSU's always had big bucks. Some of these other schools with big money amounts, and then everybody else is out.
No.
I just don't think they're going to let that happen.
No, and I don't think they will either, because you're right. Why do people like college sports? I mean, the reason why I watch college sports over pro sports is because the athletes always played for something a little bit more. It was almost like that you see the fun in it, right? These athletes, these college kids are like, we want to play this sport because we're playing it like we're not going to get a pro contract, like we're not the biggest deal there is out there. It's like guys like Arch Manning, right? You're getting $5 million or something. Do you feel like he's going to play like, man?
And he's already off to a rough start last spring. They're already making excuses for him down there.
Exactly. It's just, it kind of takes the meaning of it out of it, it was all about the sport. It was all about these guys coming here not because of the money, because they wanted to win something for that school. I just think that was so special.
73-74, I covered the Texas Rangers in baseball and the Dallas Cowboys in football. I hated that experience. I went into it with no attitude. I'd never done it before. I'd only covered high school sports at that point because I'd been working at small markets. But those 2 years, it burned me out on it fast and when I got here, there was such a change in attitude dealing with Frank Broyles instead of Tom Landry. Tom Landry wouldn't bother to talk to you. Broyles was like...
He always met with you, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And just the players. I mean, Bob Lilly, a player my cousin grew up, Bob Lilly was a big jerk when I was around him. These players that I start interviewing when I get to Arkansas, man, they're fired up. They want to play. And they're not talking about money and what do you give me and give me that.
They're playing it because they love it. Because they love it. And that to me is why you get into college sports. In pro sports, right, if you don't win a title at the end of it, your fans might be bad, but LeBron James still gets paid, right?
Exactly.
Right? He still gets paid.
Look at Peyton Stovall. He turns down $2 million, and his career hadn't gone well so far, but he's still out there. He'll be back next year trying to make something happen because he wants to play college ball.
Because he loves it, because he really, truly loves it, and you see that with these guys here. Wizard of Hogs says, with regards to your answer to my question last week, I respectfully submit that I was not mixed up in the question I asked, okay? Here is a quote from Jeff Goodman, I think, right? Quote from Jeff Goodman. One concept that came up today in D1 Council meeting by the Modernization of Rules Subcommittee was that playing pro basketball for a certain period of time wouldn't disallow players from coming back and playing college basketball. Not ready to be voted on, but discussion will continue.
Yeah, if he had included that link in the question, I could have found it. I looked for it. I tried to find it.
I know you did. And to back Mike up on this, you Googled it a lot.
Yes, I tried to find it. Now, it turned out, you know where I should have gone?
Where?
Coach Z. Coach Z found
Coach
it.
Z's the best.
And I found a response from him and I just missed it trying to find it, but he responded to it.
Okay.
So it is a real thing, and I apologize to Wizard of Hogs because I thought he was talking about the rule that's been discussed, which I don't think is ever going to become a rule, where if you declare for the draft, then go past the draft deadline and don't get drafted, you could turn around and come back.
Exactly.
And I still don't think they're going to do that because I think it would hold coaches hostage.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If I do that, I can just wait, and you got to wait on me. Well, what if you don't wait? Then what happens? You know what? And even this sounds even worse. What are you going to play like 3 games in the NBA and get moved back down to the G Leagues? And you say, I'm
going back to college.
I'm going back to college. Well, you're not going to be able to go back to your other team because they've already moved on. So you know what this rule would do? It would create more portal stuff.
Yeah.
There would just be more. Every coach would be going, okay, we got to look at the guys that went in and decided to come back. So we got another bunch of portal guys floating around there, and it's just. I don't think it happens.
Yeah, it sounds even more confusing than what we were talking about last week. I mean, because at least in your rule, when you commit, or when you decide to go into the draft and then pull your name out, at least you haven't played any games in there. I don't understand how you'd be like, oh, let me just tip my toe in. And
I'm trying to wrap my head around the logic of this thing. Do you get to play 4 games in G League, or do you get to
go play the summer league and then come back
after the summer league? What are we talking about here? It's just very confusing.
Yeah, I'd like to look into that more myself, truly, because I think that'd be interesting to read what the discussion looks like there. Wade Rogers says, I've searched around. Excuse me, I'm sorry, get my voice back. I've searched around about Kevin Kopps, but can't find anything consistent. Is he near making the big show yet?
He's with San Antonio, the Padres AA team in San Antonio, the Missions.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, he was 3-3 with an ERA of about 3, which is okay. He would have to go to their AAA affiliate, which is San Antonio, the Rattlers, or El Paso, the Rattlers, or something up there. I don't know what they are. I don't follow that. I don't follow the Texas League, but he'd have to go there, and then if he did well there, he's still a good full step away from Major League Baseball. And how long is it? He's been in minor leagues, what, two full seasons?
Yeah, 2 full seasons.
So we'll see. I don't know. It's not unusual for it to take a while, but he's still a step and then another step to get into the major leagues.
Well, there you go. Hot Dogger says the 1978 Orange Bowl win was a shock to me back in the day, with some of our best players being suspended by Lou Holtz. It seemed like the Hogs didn't have a chance. What game surprised you the most that the Hogs won, but you thought there was no way they would win? This is a really interesting question,
well, it
Mike.
wouldn't be that one, because here's the thing about that 78 team.
Okay.
That was not the upset everybody says it was, because a lot of the people that were surprised by that weren't paying attention to that team. I've talked to some of those guys that were on that team. In fact, there's a guy that works in Lowe's, and I go in there and get paint all the time. He works in the paint section.
Yeah.
And he was on that team, and we talk a lot.
Oh, I love that.
And he'll tell you, and any of those guys will tell you, that team was loaded with talent. It was too deep on both sides of the ball. Frank Broyles, in his last 2 or 3 years as a head coach, they recruited the fool out of their recruiting was outstanding. And those guys were the ones that benefited from that. He turned it over to Lou, and Lou inherited a really good team, too deep. And that's why they were able to pull that off. And it wasn't so much of an upset as they were just that good that they could do that. That might have been, in fact, in my opinion, it's the best collection of talent ever at this school.
Wow.
I think it was better than the national championship team. I think they had more depth. The only reason they didn't win the national championship in 77 season was because of one pass play against Texas. And there was a screen pass that, went down to about the 2-yard line. And that was the difference in them winning a national championship or not. They had one loss. That was the one game they lost at home, and Earl Campbell did it to them. And Earl Campbell is a heck of a player. They had him bottled up the whole game. They were never across the 50-yard line, but right at the end, they got across, and they threw a screen pass to him. They almost never involved him in the passing game. And he caught the pass. It shocked everybody and went down to the 2-yard line, and then they scored. Oh. That's the only reason they didn't win the national championship that year. So that was not the upset. The biggest one that I remember was in 1992. This was after Jack Crow got fired in the first game of the year for losing to the Citadel, and Joe Kynes was named the interim head coach. Arkansas went to Knoxville playing in front of 100,000 people. Tennessee was 5-0. They were ranked number 4 in the country. Arkansas was 1-4.
Oh.
And we're just thought of as a bunch of stinko. This is a terrible team. They decided, Joe Kynes decided before the game to start Barry Lunny Jr. He was a freshman. And I'm thinking to myself, Joe, this kid's a freshman. You're going to make his first start in Knoxville in front of 100,000 people and against a top 5 team. You're crazy. He's going to just freak out. Well, he didn't. In fact, pretty early on in that game, he threw like a 50 or 60-yard bomb to Ron Dickerson Jr., and they had the lead for a while into the third quarter, and I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be a big upset. And then Tennessee came back, took the lead, and so now there's a couple of minutes left, and they're down. And there was a punt. They forced a punt.
Okay.
And Orlando Waters ran back a 77-yard punt for a touchdown to put Arkansas to within 2 points.
No way.
So they try for the 2-point conversion to tie it up, and Lunny gets sacked or dropped behind the line of scrimmage. So now you think, well, they tried, but it's done. But they tried an onside kick, and they got the ball back, made, I think, 1 first down maybe, and then Todd Wright kicked a 50-yard field goal and beat them. And that team won 3 games that year. 3 games.
And that was one of them.
And they beat the number 4 team in the country in front of their home fans. And I'm still looking at that going, how did that happen? How? How did you win that game? And I'm still not sure. I mean, Lunny played a great game, but Orlando Waters did what he did. They recovered that. It was just a strange set of circumstances.
I want to see the highlights from that one. I wonder if they're out there somewhere on the internet, or someone could send us a link, because I would love.
It was amazing.
I would love to see the highlights of that.
You talk about an upset. That was an upset.
That's awesome. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to find the highlights of that one and watch that, because that sounds awesome, Mike. WV Hog fan asked, in 2007, didn't Steve Spurrier leave Darren completely off his ballot so he would help Tim Tebow secure the Heisman? That was also the year Darren ran up and down the field against his South Carolina team. It was also so weird that in 2006, voters said that no sophomore should win the Heisman, but in 2007, Tim Tebow won, being a freshman.
Well, first of all, the voters, which are the Heisman electors, they don't say anything. They don't go poll these guys. Why didn't you vote for Darren McFadden?
No.
So you'd have to poll every one of them to find out why. That might have been an excuse that was offered at the time. Well, Darren McFadden's an underclassman. You kind of have to be an upperclassman, but there's no rule on that.
No.
And indeed, the next year, Tebow, who's a freshman, won it. So that proved there was no rule. I can't prove this, but I will tell you I'm about 100% convinced that the reason Darren McFadden didn't win the Heisman in 06 was because Arkansas lost 4 games.
Yeah.
You can't. If you're at Arkansas and you want to win the Heisman, you got a Heisman-type candidate, Arkansas is going to have to almost go undefeated. That's just the way the things work, because they're going to give it to the best player on the best team.
Yeah.
We keep hearing that over and over again. And there are exceptions. Sometimes there's a guy that's so good and maybe his team didn't win the national championship, maybe they had 2 losses, but it's not going to be Arkansas if that happens. The only way people have asked, what are the chances of K.J. Jefferson or Rocket Sanders winning the Heisman this year? And I'm telling you, they're not going to win the Heisman because Arkansas would have to win the SEC.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you look at even last year with the disrespect of some of these guys getting left off of awards ballots and things like that, and you're like, whoa, hold on, Rocket Sanders, like, you're not going to give it to these guys? But it's almost because of the logo they wear across their chest. It's just not.
Partially due to the logo,
Yeah.
but it also is a number of losses.
Number of losses, yeah. It's just, I hate that, though. I wish there was a rule to prevent that. Does that make sense? There was a rule that
There's no rules on there, believe me.
I
know.
know.
I get to vote, and nobody's ever said, hey, you follow these rules. The only rule they have for a Heisman elector is you cannot announce who you voted for before the results or before the Heisman
right,
show.
but after you can say whoever, yeah.
But you can't, if you come out and say, hey, I voted for this guy, if they find out about it, they'll remove you.
Ooh,
They don't want that going on. But that's the only rule.
Yeah, that's the only
Vote for
spoken
whoever
rule.
you want.
Yeah.
I could vote for some guy that was a complete turkey if I wanted to. They might think this guy is terrible.
They might remove your vote next year.
They might come
go
to me and say, we don't think you're legitimate
Mike
anymore.
Irwin, I don't know if we're going to let you vote anymore after that one.
I've only voted one time for somebody from Arkansas, and that was McFadden. I've never voted for somebody just because they're from Arkansas.
No.
I generally vote for the guy that probably wins it because it's usually fairly obvious.
Yeah, and also you have to remain unbiased in those things,
now,
right? You know,
putting 3 names down there. The 3 names sometimes are different from what I put down. I sometimes put down somebody second or third that other people might not. But usually, who I'm voting for to win it is most of the time it's the guy that wins it because it's so obvious.
Yeah. Exactly. And I believe that other voters would agree with you on that. I want to, Alyssa's a voter too, right? Alyssa votes too, yeah. Marty Bird's Proxy asks, what's the win number that will give us a good season in that brutal 7-game stretch of LSU, A&M, Ole Miss, Bama, Mississippi State, Florida, and Auburn, only 2 of which are in Fayetteville, by the way. Whew.
I mean, when you look at that, you're sitting there going, how are they going to have even a winning record? I mean, that's tough. There's a lot of people that love these 2 new coaches on defense and what they're doing, the defensive coordinator and the co-coordinator and the recruiting they've done and I know the guys on the defensive side of the ball are all fired up. I mean, Dan Enos, everybody's kind of curious, what's he going to do with KJ Jefferson? He's going to make him better if he makes him just a little bit better. But then you got all these questions at wide receiver. They lost virtually all of their receivers, so everybody's a new guy.
Yeah.
So who's going to step up at wide receiver? And then offensive line's fairly new too. They lost a lot of experience there. So you don't know what's going to happen. But when you're sitting there looking at that schedule, here's what I would say in answer to the question. What would it take to have a good season? I would say 6 or 7 wins would be good, given that.
Yeah, 6 or 7.
But that will not be acceptable to the critics of Sam Pittman.
No.
I think they've got to win at least 8 games. And probably 9.
I was going to say
to keep those people from still being mad and still saying, "Well, he's a good old boy, but he's in over his head." That.
Oh, I've seen him all over you saw a few weeks ago on Twitter there was some guy saying, "Oh, Sam Pittman doesn't care about football. He's off, because he partying." And I'm like,
it's the summer. It's the one time of year when you can't recruit, you can't do anything.
He's enjoying himself.
So he went down to Hot Springs and he goes to the races and watches the boats float by.
He has a good time.
I don't know if they're having races right now.
Right, but he's allowed to have a vacation, right? Musselman is having some fun.
He's all over the place.
He's having some fun in California. Dave Van Horn gets to take a vacation. Everybody gets to take a vacation, guys. They are allowed time off. They are allowed time off.
I think it's
they
going to take
families.
at least 8 wins and maybe 9 to shut some of those people up.
Yeah, 9, I agree with you on 9. I think 9 even, you will get critics still.
You'll
still get
but
critics.
That schedule is unbelievable.
It really is.
Especially that one stretch of 7 games.
9 will be very impressive. If they can win 9, I will be. Good job, guys. Rad Hog says, you and I moved to Fayetteville the same year. Luckily, there are no videotapes of me as a knucklehead freshman, but do you have any clips of your on-air work or photos from 1975? Would love to see a football interview from them.
If you were to see a football interview that I did in 75, it wouldn't be on video, it would be film. Because when I got here, there were only 2 television stations in this market, and they both used film. The place where I worked at the time, I was told a long time ago, at some point they got rid of all their film. So I don't think there's any film of me in 75 interviewing anybody.
I've searched for your old stuff, and I can only think I can only get back to like the 90s, I think.
Yeah,
there's one good clip.
There's one good clip? Will says there was one good clip.
You've seen the clip.
I know that. I know the clip we're talking about. The clip.
About the College World Series.
When you're at the College World Series and you stiff arm a guy, that's my favorite Mike Irwin clip.
That's fairly recent in terms
No,
of,
that was, what year was that? What do you remember? It's fine. But it's a fairly recent clip, not a 90s
However, there
clip.
is one photograph, we're going to show it.
Okay.
That is a photograph from when I was first here. And here's the interesting thing about that. Notice the mic flag I'm holding. It's an NBC mic flag. I was working for a CBS station. I don't know what in the world's going on there.
So why were you holding an NBC?
Look, I'm sure there was a reason for it. The only thing I can figure out is that there were only 2 stations in the market, and one was CBS and one was ABC. And I think the station I worked for had the option of running some NBC programming if they wanted to. They could pick and choose because there was no NBC station. I can't imagine they would pick the NBC News at night over CBS.
No.
So how did we end up with NBC mic flags? I don't know. I'm just holding one. I couldn't tell you. But what's really weird is there I am in 75 holding an NBC mic flag, and for the last 11 years I worked for an NBC station here. So it looks normal now, except I look a little different. The other thing is, if you look in the background, up top of the stadium, that's the old single-deck stadium in 75, and you've got that old press box back there. And I like to look at that from time to time because I have a lot of memories of that place.
Nice.
Number one, the first couple of years okay because we were film cameras weren't that heavy. You had to go to the photo deck and shoot up there. You had to walk all the way up the stands, and then you had to go up a ladder to get up there further to get into there to the photo deck.
That's terrifying.
But then when they went to video, those video cameras sometimes weighed 50, 75 pounds, so it was a little scary trying to do that. But the main thing was I quickly decided I did not like the press box. First of all, it was not heated or air conditioned. So, especially in those September games, the heating, there might have been some space heaters in there, I don't know. But there was no air conditioning. And so on those September games, they would just open the window and you just sit up there. So I was like, I'm not staying up here. I went down on the field. And so early on, I'm shooting down on the field rather than going up to the photo deck.
Nice. I like that.
So when I see that picture, I'm sitting there thinking, nah, I didn't go up there on that photo deck.
So the press box now, way better, right?
Oh, yeah. It's the elevator. You just walk right out. Of course, we don't shoot up there anymore. I don't, but I'm not shooting games anymore. But at some point that all changed when they got elevators and came into the modern world. But that old press box was awful, man. It had one bathroom. Now, it wasn't as bad as you think because there were no women in the media back then. It was all guys. But
why is that not as bad as you would think? I think it's kind of fun with us up there too.
Women up there trying to go in this bathroom.
Oh, the one bathroom.
There was no men's and women's bathroom.
That makes
sense. Just one bathroom. So
you'll have to make do then, I guess. You have to make do.
So the only reason I ever went up there was they had a pregame meal. I'd go up there and eat, and then I'd be back down on the field.
Well, that's awesome. I love that picture, Mike. We'll try and find some stuff of your older stuff if we can, and see.
Doesn't exist.
Oh, we'll see.
They threw it away. I'm telling you, I've asked before.
Listen, that's a challenge. I'm willing to step to the challenge and see if we can find your older stuff. I'm sure it'd be pretty funny if we could show some of it here. But that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.